Disclaimer: this story is a fictionalized account inspired by true events. Names, places, and certain details have been changed to protect privacy. The emotions and situations depicted are intended for storytelling purposes only. I was alone. The kind of alone that wraps around you like a thick fog, heavy and suffocating. It wasn't just the physical emptiness of the house, it was the hollow space inside me, where hope used to live. Days had stretched into weeks, and each night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything that had fallen apart. The house was too quiet now. The laughter that once filled these rooms was gone. I remembered the sound of his voice, the way he used to call my name from the other room, or the soft footsteps coming toward me after a long day. But now, all I had was silence. And in that silence, my mind played every moment back, the happy times and the moments I ignored the signs. I never imagined that the person I trusted most could be the one to break me down. I kept telling myself to be strong, to hold on to the memories that were worth saving. But as the days passed, it became harder to distinguish love from pain. Every text left unanswered, every call unanswered, felt like a punch to the gut. The loneliness wasn't just because he was physically absent. It was because the truth had crept in slowly, like a shadow growing longer with the setting sun. I had suspected things, yes. But denial was easier to live with than the sharp sting of betrayal. I told myself it was just stress, work, or maybe distance. But deep down, the doubt was eating away at me. I spent hours scrolling through my phone, rereading old messages, looking for clues. Sometimes I thought I found them, sometimes I convinced myself I was imagining things. But the nagging feeling didn't leave. It was like waiting for a storm you knew was coming but hoping it would pass you by. In the quiet of that night, I sat by the window, the cold breeze brushing my face. I wondered how we had reached this point where love was replaced by suspicion, where trust turned to fear. The house felt like a prison now, filled with memories I wasn't ready to face. I missed him, but not the man he had become. I missed the idea of us, what we promised each other in the beginning. But now, I was left alone with my questions and my pain, waiting for a moment that could change everything. And then, just when the silence seemed unbearable, the doorbell rang. The doorbell shattered the silence like a sudden crack of thunder on a still day. My heart jumped, a mix of hope and dread swirling inside me. Who could it be? I wasn't expecting anyone. My hands trembled slightly as I moved toward the door, each step heavy with hesitation. For a moment, I just stood there, fingers lingering on the doorknob, unwilling to open it. What if it was a stranger? What if it was someone bringing bad news? Or worse, what if it was him? The man who had left me in this limbo of pain and uncertainty. My mind raced through the possibilities, memories flooding back, the last argument, the unanswered texts, the nights spent alone wondering if everything was truly over. I had been so sure he was gone for good. So why now? Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself and finally opened the door. There he was. Standing there in the fading light of the evening, looking both familiar and somehow different. His eyes held a mixture of regret and something I couldn't quite place. Was it sorrow? Or desperation? The way he looked at me stopped my breath for a second. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. The simple question felt like a test. Was I ready to let him back into my life? My heart screamed no, but my voice was caught somewhere between silence and hesitation. I stepped aside, allowing him to enter. The house suddenly felt smaller, as if the walls were closing in on me with his presence. He looked around nervously, avoiding eye contact. I noticed the lines of exhaustion under his eyes, the way his hands fidgeted, a man burdened with secrets. We didn't say much at first. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. I wanted answers. I wanted to scream and cry, but instead, I just watched him carefully, waiting for him to speak. "I know I don't deserve your trust," he began, voice low and shaky. But I couldn't stay away. I had to come back, to explain. Explain. The word echoed in my mind. What could he possibly say that would make any difference? The betrayal had already been done. The nights I spent alone, the doubts I carried, they weren't easily erased. But still, I listened. Because part of me still wanted to understand. Wanted to find a way out of the darkness, even if it meant facing the worst. As he started to tell his story, the pieces I had ignored, the hints I tried to forget, began to fall into place. This wasn't just about mistakes, it was about choices, and the consequences of those choices had landed squarely on me. That night, the door that I thought was closed forever had opened again. And with it, a new chapter began, one filled with pain, but also the faintest glimmer of truth. The door swung wide, and there he stood, no longer just a shadow in my mind, but a real person, flesh and blood, standing in the space I had made so empty. His presence was overwhelming, a mix of familiarity and something I wasn't ready to face. It was as if all the walls I'd built around my heart were suddenly cracked, threatening to crumble. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat was tight, my mind racing to process what was happening. This was the man who had walked away without explanation, who had left me questioning everything about us. And yet, here he was, vulnerable, raw, waiting for me to respond. He looked at me with eyes that were both apologetic and pleading. "I know I don't deserve this," he said quietly, "but I need you to hear me out." His voice trembled slightly, betraying the calm he was trying to show. I wanted to shut the door and never look back, but something held me in place. Maybe it was the years we'd spent together, the memories I wasn't ready to let go of, or maybe it was the simple need to understand. Slowly, I stepped aside, motioning for him to come in. The air between us was thick with tension, charged with emotions I wasn't sure how to handle. As he entered, I noticed the way his hands trembled, the hesitation in his movements. He wasn't the confident man I remembered, he was broken in ways I hadn't fully realized. We sat down, the distance between us filled with silence that spoke louder than words. I watched him carefully, searching for the truth behind his eyes. Was this remorse? Or was it just another lie? He cleared his throat, finally breaking the silence. "I never wanted to hurt you," he began. "But I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. I was lost, and instead of coming to you, I ran away." His confession hit me like a punch. The pain I'd been carrying suddenly felt sharper, deeper. But beneath the anger, there was also a flicker of something else, curiosity, maybe even hope. "Why now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why come back after all this time?" He looked down, gathering his thoughts. "Because I couldn't live with the guilt anymore. Because I realized what I lost, the life we had. And because I wanted to be honest with you, even if it's too late." His words stirred something inside me. The man who opened the door wasn't just the cause of my pain, he was also the person who had once been my everything. But the question remained, could I trust him again? Could I face the truth without falling apart? The room felt heavy as I wrestled with my emotions. Anger, sadness, confusion all tangled together. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear, the door was open now, and whatever happened next would change everything. As he sat across from me, the truth began to unravel slowly, like a thread pulled from a tightly woven fabric. I had suspected something for a long time, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real, more painful and undeniable than I ever expected. He hesitated, his eyes flickering with guilt. "There's something I need to tell you," he said quietly. "I wasn't just working late those nights. I was seeing someone else." The words hit me harder than any slap could. I felt my chest tighten, breath catching in my throat. I had always feared this moment, the confirmation of the betrayal I had tried to ignore. But now, it was here, raw and impossible to deny. He looked away, ashamed. "It started small. I never meant for it to happen, but it did. I was confused, and I made choices I regret every day since." The room seemed to close in around me. The images of happy times clashed violently with this harsh new reality. How could someone I loved so deeply betray me like this? How could the man I trusted open the door to a world where lies and secrets had taken root? I wanted to scream, to ask why, to demand answers that could somehow make sense of this nightmare. But all I could do was sit there, numb, trying to process the pieces falling apart. He reached out hesitantly, but I pulled back. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I whispered, voice trembling. "You broke everything we had." Tears welled up, blurring my vision. The hurt was so deep, it felt like a physical wound. Yet beneath the pain, a strange kind of relief surfaced. The secret was finally out in the open. The silence that had haunted me was shattered. He nodded slowly, accepting my anger and pain. "I understand," he said. "And I'm sorry more than words can say. I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect things to go back to how they were. I just want you to know the truth." The truth. It was a heavy burden, but also the only chance we had to face reality honestly. I realized then that the man who had opened the door wasn't just asking for forgiveness, he was asking me to see the reality, no matter how painful. As the night wore on, he told me everything, the late-night meetings, the lies, the guilt that had eaten away at him. And though it broke my heart, it also gave me clarity. I could no longer live in doubt or pretend everything was fine. That night, the hidden truth no longer lurked in shadows. It stood between us, raw and undeniable, forcing me to decide what I would do next. The air between us was thick with tension as the truth settled in the room like an unwelcome guest. I felt every emotion swirl inside me: anger, betrayal, sadness, each one demanding to be heard. I couldn't keep it bottled up any longer. I needed answers, clarity, some form of closure. "Why?" The question escaped my lips before I could stop it. "Why did you do it? How could you betray everything we had?" He looked down, shame shadowing his face. "I don't have a good excuse," he said softly. "I was lost. I made a terrible mistake. It wasn't about you, it was about my own failures, my own weaknesses." His words felt like a knife twisting inside me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake him and demand he explain how he could shatter my trust so completely. But instead, the silence stretched between us, heavy and painful. I thought back to all the times I had noticed the signs but ignored them, the late nights, the distant looks, the broken promises. I realized I had been living in a lie, hoping against hope that everything was just a phase. But the truth was uglier than I ever dared imagine. "Did you love her?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He hesitated, the weight of my question pressing down on him. "No," he finally admitted. "It was never about love. It was weakness, temptation, something I shouldn't have given into. I was selfish, and I hurt you." Hearing him say it aloud didn't lessen the pain. If anything, it made it more real, more devastating. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. I needed to be strong, to hold myself together. "How long?" I asked quietly. "Several months," he confessed, voice breaking. Every word felt like another crack in my heart. I had spent so long trying to pretend everything was fine, but now the truth was undeniable. The man I loved had been living a double life. I struggled to understand how someone could live with such guilt and still come back, asking for forgiveness. But maybe, I thought, this confrontation was the first step toward healing for both of us. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said honestly. "Not yet. You broke something inside me that might never fully heal." He nodded, tears glistening in his own eyes. "I know. I'm sorry for everything. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want you to know I'm here, willing to face whatever comes next." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something buried deep beneath the pain: hope. Maybe this confrontation wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of a journey neither of us wanted but had to take. As the night stretched on, we sat together in silence, two broken souls trying to find a way forward. The path ahead was uncertain, but at least now, the truth was out in the open. The days after that night were a blur of restless thoughts and unanswered questions. My mind kept circling around the same issues, desperate to find some reason, some explanation that could help me make sense of the chaos. Why did it happen? Could it have been prevented? Was there something I missed? I needed answers, not just for the sake of understanding him, but to piece together what had gone wrong inside our relationship. I wanted to know if there was any hope left, or if I was just holding on to a shattered illusion. One afternoon, I sat down with him again. This time, the atmosphere was different, less charged with anger, but heavy with the weight of raw emotions. I knew I had to ask the questions I had been avoiding. "Tell me everything," I said, looking him in the eyes. "I need to know what pushed you away." He sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. It started with small things, stress at work, feeling disconnected from you. But I never told you. I bottled it up. Instead of talking, I withdrew. His confession stung because I recognized the truth in it. We had both drifted apart, but neither of us had faced it honestly. The silence between us had grown louder, creating a distance that neither of us knew how to cross. I was lonely, he admitted. And when someone else showed me attention, I made the worst decision of my life. I thought it would fill the emptiness, but it only made things worse. Listening to him, I realized that the infidelity wasn't just about betrayal, it was a symptom of deeper problems we never confronted. Our communication had broken down, and instead of fighting for us, he had chosen to escape. Did you ever think about telling me? I asked quietly. He looked away, ashamed. I was afraid. Afraid of hurting you, afraid of losing you. But in trying to protect you, I destroyed everything. The honesty was painful but necessary. I began to see the complexity of our situation not just as a story of betrayal, but as a story of two people who lost their way. I asked him about the woman, how it started, what it meant to him. He didn't try to justify it, he only wanted me to understand the emptiness he felt and the mistakes he made. As the conversation unfolded, I felt a mix of emotions, sadness for what we lost, anger at his choices, but also a faint spark of compassion for the man who had broken but still wanted to be better. The search for answers didn't bring instant healing, but it gave me clarity. I could no longer pretend. I had to face the reality, painful as it was. That day, I realized that forgiveness, if it was ever possible, would come only after understanding, after both of us confronted the truth fully. And that journey would be long and uncertain. But for the first time, I felt like I was no longer wandering alone in the dark. Days passed, and with each one, the weight of everything pressed down on me harder. I stood at a crossroads, the road ahead blurred by confusion and pain. I knew I had to make a decision, one that would shape the rest of my life. Could I forgive him? Could I trust him again? Or was it time to walk away for good? That night, I sat alone in the living room, the flickering light casting shadows on the walls. I replayed everything in my mind, the betrayal, his apologies, the long talks searching for answers. My heart was a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Love fought against hurt, hope against despair. I remembered the man who once made me laugh until my stomach hurt, who held my hand through tough times, who promised forever. Could that man still be inside the broken shell that stood before me? Or was he gone forever? He sat quietly nearby, watching me with a mixture of fear and hope. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, he said softly. I want to rebuild, even if it's slow. Even if you don't believe me now. His words touched something deep inside me, but the scars were fresh and raw. Trust wasn't something that could be fixed overnight. It would take time, patience, honesty, and effort. I realized this turning point wasn't just about him, it was about me too. About how I valued myself, how much I was willing to endure, and what I deserved. I couldn't let the past destroy my future, but I also couldn't ignore my pain. With a shaky breath, I said, I don't know what will happen next. But I'm willing to try, for myself, and for us. But you have to understand, this is not just about words. It's about actions. He nodded, relief flooding his face. I promise. No more secrets. In that moment, the door between us wasn't just open physically, it was open emotionally. A fragile bridge, built from tears and honest conversations, began to form. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, and pain to face. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope, a possibility that healing could begin. I wasn't completely sure where this journey would lead, but I knew one thing, I was no longer alone in my silence. The days that followed were a mixture of fragile hope and painful reality. We tried to rebuild the broken pieces, but I quickly realized that healing wasn't a straight path. Some days were better, others felt like the past was clawing back, threatening to undo everything. Despite the promises, trust wasn't easily restored. I found myself questioning every word, every gesture, every moment. The wounds were too fresh, and the scars ran deep. There were times I wanted to give in to anger and just walk away, to protect myself from more pain. But then I would remember why I had stayed so far, to hold on to the memories of love, the good times, and the hope for something better. Still, slowly, it became clear to me that sometimes love means knowing when to let go. I came to understand that forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves so that the past doesn't chain us down forever. And sometimes, moving forward means walking alone. One evening, I sat by the window again, just like that first night when I was lost in silence. But this time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to open a door. I was ready to open a new door for myself. I knew that I deserved peace, respect, and honesty, whether that came from him or from myself alone. I had to rebuild not just the relationship, but my own sense of self-worth. It was the hardest decision, but I chose to move forward alone. Not because I didn't love him anymore, but because I loved myself enough to seek happiness beyond the betrayal. I packed away the memories that weighed me down, and I promised myself that I would no longer be trapped by the past. I would learn to trust again, first in myself, then in others. Walking away was not a failure. It was a new beginning. I am no longer alone in the silence. I am learning to fill that space with strength, hope, and the promise of a brighter future, one where I am whole again.